Not a ton of quality in the men's game against Valencia today, but if you did want to see some Barcelona quality, watch that Caroline Graham-Hansen goal against Villarreal that happened this afternoon. That was pretty good as she looks to regain her fitness. And while she seems to be getting her fitness back pretty quickly, I know you came here to hear about the team, that being the men's first team that doesn't have all its players fully fit. And when I say Xavi Hernandez's team, I really today mean Oscar Hernandez's team. So let's get into it. The 5 headlines from Barcelona's 1-0 win over Valencia. 1 is another result for result's sake. Here's the good news. Barcelona's 1-0 win over Valencia put them at minimum 7 points above Real Madrid by the time this comes out. Again, I'm recording this before the Real Madrid-Real Betis match, so let's see how that one turns out. But it could be anywhere from 7 to 10 points for Barca in the league table. And with the condition the team is in with all those injuries that we know about, very little rotation could happen. And fatigue has certainly been something that this team is struggling with. So with that Real Madrid result on Thursday, I guess there should have been a little bit of a letdown, but I also understand the frustration and disappointment that both the team had and Kool-Aid's had about what felt like a win that was just not as comfortable as it should have been. Even though Xavi was watching this game up on high, he's still the one who picked that starting 11. And of course, it was an interesting choice, I think, to start Ferran Torres in the middle and Ansu on the left, since Torres can't be on the right with Raphinha. So you try to have Ansu be the more comfortable on the left and hope that Torres can do something in the center. That's what it was on paper, but we do know with Balde in the starting lineup that it was going to be a 3-2-5 in attack, which it was, which often pulls Ansu to the left half space and around the top of the 18 anyway. So I know it's semantics about who was the 9 and who was out to the left wing. It didn't really matter based on the way that Barcelona were attacking. It was much about the quality of Barcelona's attack that we'll get into. Because regardless of where those two were playing, it did feel like, for large parts of the first half at least, Barcelona had figured out Valencia's 4-1-4-1. It's not too complicated, and it's more about Valencia's survival in the first division than it is about them actually trying to get 3 points against Barcelona on the road. And while there are times that it looked like they had it figured out, there were many times when it didn't. And in the times that it did, there were some bright sides, like Ferran Torres and Raphinha, who seemed to have a pretty good partnership, more than I think we've ever seen from them before, but we'll get into that later. Because 2 is sloppy stuff. I will get to, I guess, a few positive things, but for me, I know that without Pedri and Gavi, it should go without saying that I'm going to complain about the midfield. But I think fundamentally, I do have not individuals to speak about, but the system and whatever the instructions were that weren't working in that 4-1-4-1. I get the idea is that you have to get, especially Roberto and De Jong, you had to get them in between those lines. That's how you break down a 4-1-4-1 and what was a medium to low block that Valencia was playing in that first half. But that led to way too much separation between Busquets and then Roberto and De Jong. In that 3-2-5, if you're going to attack like that, you do have to have that other player next to Busquets, especially to cover for him. So Barcelona, I felt like, were giving up way too much space in the middle of the field. And again, that's not just on Busquets. Regardless if it's Busquets or Pedri or De Jong, whoever it is, again, attacking a 3-2-5 with Balde going wide, you have to have at least 2 in the middle of the field to cut out any kind of counterattack. And of the newly renewed Roberto, I don't have that much to say about him, but that absence of things to say will likely turn into a discussion on the podcast in the next few days. And at halftime, Kessie comes on, gives De Jong a rest, and that did seem to be pre-planned, so nothing to worry about. If you look at the minutes that De Jong has played over the last month, well, if you go back all the way to the fall or all the way to the summer, when it felt like he was going to be on the outside of the squad looking in, look at the minutes that he has chalked up in the last 2 months, and that tells you how important he's become. So he does get a much deserved and needed rest in that second half. And going back to it, I think clearly the instruction was that something wasn't working with that space in the middle, why he was getting so bad. So there was a difference, because with De Jong and Roberto, neither were really playing alongside Busquets in that 2 of the 3-2-5. It looked like Kessie and Roberto would then oscillate depending on the side of the field that the ball was on. If it's on the left, Kessie would push forward and support Balde and even make those underlapping runs. It was a little less for Roberto on the right, but Barca also wasn't doing much build-up on the right. Those diagonal switches weren't really on today, and we actually have seen a lot less of those, not only since Pedri got hurt, but since Dembele isn't there. It seems like his teammates don't fling those diagonal balls out to Raphinha the way they do Dembele. And as much as it felt like it wasn't happening today, the stats kind of prove a little bit otherwise, but Raphinha being 3 of 8 of his dribbles tell me that what I saw was about the success that I was looking for. Instead, it was Balde's 4 of 5 dribbles, which is more indicative of how Barca was going to succeed today. If Balde was a bit more decisive once he gets inside, the world is certainly his oyster, and I was happy with what he did today, obviously. And while it wasn't necessarily there today, that final ball, you can see it's all very possible. It continues to be a good sign as we continue to remind you that he is a teenager. And I'm still excited to see what Balde is capable of if he does continue to improve. But talking again about what the drop from Dembele to Raphinha might be, or what the drop from Pedri to Roberto might be, big picture-wise, as I've said a million times in the last few weeks, I can deal with Barca getting pushed to and past their limits by top teams around Europe, but I do expect more in the Liga against teams facing relegation, regardless of how big of a name Valencia is. With no Pedri, no Dembele, no Lewandowski, that was an excuse, I think a fair excuse for El Clasico. But that can't be the case at home against Valencia, or on the road against Almeria. It was just too sloppy from Barca today, and it was a weird juxtaposition too. Because I can give you reasons to praise Raphinha, and to praise Torres, and to praise Ter Stegen, but I thought all three of them were really, really sloppy and unfortunately sloppy on the ball that put Barcelona in compromising spots in this game. The midfield three wasn't pristine either, and while I have been on social media and here on the podcast and stuff, been accused of not making a point, my point is it's both things. They were good and they were bad from this game on the ball, and Barcelona was also, you have to give them credit, at times they were attacking and they probably should have had more goals than they did. Headline 3 is Raphinha's header. Speaking of goals, it looks like I just went in and was really negative about Raphinha, but his goal was really important. And a reminder too that his 17 goal contributions are second on this team. So Pedri and Dembele, as important as they are, behind Lewandowski, the name is Raphinha to either assist or score the goal. He had a big one against Osasuna when Barca went down to 10 men, and another moment, I'd say, when Barcelona weren't playing their best, I might have settled for a draw, Raphinha came up big again. It's his 5th league goal, and it was perfectly delivered. As much as I gave Raphinha credit, I also want to give credit to another guy that I was already disparaging, Busquets, and say that this was a perfect ball. Wonderful job by Busquets to read that run, and timing was awesome between Raphinha getting underneath and making that, what they call a rugby run, right? Underneath and getting straight into the middle, and then Busquets delivering it on a dime for the head. In that game, we had not seen that kind of quality, that kind of pass, or that kind of finish, or that kind of run. We hadn't seen any of those three things in that game, and that's why it was so disappointing. Because the minute Barcelona showed their quality, they're up 1-0. And you got the feeling that if they showed their quality at any other time in that game, they wouldn't have been up 2 or 3 or 4, and you could have had a lot more time for youngsters. Not to contradict myself immediately, but you also do expect some of those things from Barcelona. They were playing against Valencia's third-choice left-back in 20-year-old Jesus Vasquez, who sits behind Jose Gaya and Tony Lato and is break glass case of emergency kind of player. And so while you can chalk it up to his experience, it was also, while Barcelona were sloppy, Valencia was also sloppy. And I think that's why that game was kind of rough just to watch all around. Because unlike Almeria, that was just composed for the entire match, led by their goalkeeper, that being Valencia's and Mamadou Villa's decision-making and timing, it was just puzzling throughout the match, including on Raphinha's goal. He chose to come out, got it wrong, and had to pick the ball out of the net. So for as bad as Barcelona could be, it's like El Clasico. For as bad as Barcelona could be, Xavi found a way to have the opponent be worse. Headline 4 is Torres not on the spot. As far as those wasted opportunities, there is none bigger than missing a PK. And I think there could have been a lot more of a discussion and debate before this. We would have talked about it on the podcast, but it's pretty much a done and dusted story here in terms of what happened, not only on the handball, Guillamon, that's easy. He didn't look like he was bringing his arm in. It appeared that he was moving his arm away from his body, so that's going to be a PK every time. So then it gets to that moment that obviously is going to go a little viral on social media. Both Ferran Torres and Ansu Fati, plus Kessie, all desperate, looking to take the penalty. And I did see Angel Alarcon warming up, so, I mean, maybe Ansu might have felt like he was the one who was going to come off, and, well, he was for different reasons in a minute. But maybe he felt like he was going to come off soon with him warming up, that being Alarcon, so he was just, desperate to get his confidence back and wanted to take that. And after the match, Raphinha did reveal that Ferran was already assigned to take it, so Ferran was in the right to be taking that PK. And Ansu, he even possibly unsettled Ferran Torres. I want to talk about that on the podcast tomorrow. Because Ansu is a player that I usually defend, and this is one of those moments where, you want your forwards to want it, and I think that's what makes it excusable, but in the same breath, it's like, well, did he upset a player who also didn't have much confidence in Ferran Torres? Because certainly Ferran Torres took that PK with zero confidence. It showed you the form that he feels like he's in, putting the ball in the back of the net. And it takes all the good things that it felt like he did in this match, his movement at the 9 and his work with Raphinha and even his defensive efforts, it kind of felt like it was all for naught. Silver lining though, maybe that miss by Ferran did embolden Ansu a little bit because he was on goal just a moment later, puts it off the post, and that tells you where both these players are right now. And headline 5 is red for Araujo and maybe another. So Araujo will be missing at Central Athletic Club. Early reports are that that's it. If it's dissension, it's 2. If it's a foul like that and a goal-scoring opportunity, it was a clear goal-scoring opportunity, then it's just 1. So he'll miss Athletic Club, be back for El Clasico, which could be some really important rest for Araujo. Remember, that's 2 straight weeks now. No midweeks. So 2 straight weeks for Araujo to regain his fitness. That could be really positive for Barcelona. We know he's been dealing with that fatigue, and I think you saw that fatigue on that play. While Araujo shares very little of the blame, to be honest with you. So much of that goes to Koundé, just an awful header back, awful spacing, and put Araujo in a terrible position. But again, he just drags him down, and you would have felt like maybe 2 months ago, with everybody healthy, he doesn't make that decision. But yeah, it was an easy call because I think that fatigue, even more mental than physical, for Araujo to drag him down. And not that you want to trust Ter Stegen, but obviously in his defense, Araujo isn't thinking about who they're playing next week or anything like that in that moment when he gets a hold of Duro, and Duro goes down. Again, easy call for that red card. And of course, Kool-Aid still their hands up because there goes any comfortable win in that game. There goes the idea of seeing Alarcon or Pablo Torre or SNM Pedrola or any of those young players for any amount of time. Instead, it's a red card, so it's Marcos Alonso coming on for Ansu Fati. That's what you get treated to for the final 30 minutes of the game. It looked like it was a late knock to Christensen. We'll see if there are reports after this one, but he stayed on. And it's not a great sign, again, that it looks like these center backs and the players at De Jong and the like have had to play minutes over minutes over minutes because this team, because of the financial limitations, just don't have enough depth. And I am seeing a bunch of different pundits, no, neutral pundits, not Kool-Aids or anti-Kool-Aids or anything like that, but just neutral pundits. They are kind of leaving and omitting out the fact that Barcelona do not have the money to fortify their squad in the wintertime, certainly, but potentially even next summer. They're saying because of the reinforcements that arrived over the summer, that should have been enough depth. And they're kind of getting rid of the idea that, yeah, Barcelona made a lot of mistakes for a lot of transfer windows, and they put themselves in a hole to really only have 13 to 14 players that any manager could trust. We're going back 2 or 3 seasons now, and a lot was being put on Messi's shoulders. And now today, this squad still isn't deep enough to deal with these kind of rotations, but I think pundits are kind of turning a little bit and saying, hey, Xavi, you should have enough in your depth to have them playing better. And I kind of agree in the Liga. But when it comes to the entire campaign, you take it all together. They have to play at a high level in the Copa del Rey, and they were playing at a high level in Europe, and they were trying to play at a high level in the league to win the league. And that is a lot of heavy minutes on this entire squad. And I don't think the depth is good enough to contend across all competitions, even though, as I said, I think the depth should be good enough to deal with the Liga. Last few things here, as I keep mentioning the depth drying up, Eric Garcia comes on, that's fine. Marcos Alonso comes on, fine. But together, of course, a few heart palpitations, but, those were rectified a bit with Balde pushing forward and Alonso as a left back, and Barcelona did have a little bit of a defensive shape there. There was a late question for the PK, Kessie on Fran Perez, and when I say there may have been a call for a foul, there definitely was a foul. I don't know if that's a red card. I think it's definitely a yellow if he brought him down in the box like that, of course. But yeah, I didn't see him touch the ball. He pulls down the player. I think that's a foul. But they didn't give it, and Barcelona get one away. So obviously, of course, everyone who hates Barcelona is going to bring up the fact that Barcelona do get the refs in their pocket and bring up the scandal from 2 weeks ago. But yeah, they got away with one. And it's that reminder too. I want you to put a pin in this one. Because for all the times that Barcelona gets gypped, like they did in Europe this year, and they were hard done by, there are times that Barcelona get theirs. And as you might know, by the end of this weekend, this is, again, the kind of call that could help Barcelona win the Liga. And that continues to be the metric this year. Win the Liga by all and any means possible. And the same thing with the Copa del Rey. Can Barcelona get it done? Again, if you watch this game for those 90 minutes and you sit through it and say, this team is going to win 2 domestic trophies this year, and Real Madrid might only have to settle for the Champions League, if this team can win 2 domestic trophies playing like this, not saying that it doesn't matter. It does matter to me. But it gives me hope that next year, when the squad, in theory, will be stronger, we'll see what Tebas does with all that, then we won't have to deal with these kind of performances week in and week out. And yeah, there's still going to be the one-off Almeria match, but Barcelona we can look forward to week in and week out playing much better than they did today. So put this one behind you. You get a week off. There will be a podcast or 2 out this week, maybe some other stuff. And then, of course, it's Athletic Club next weekend and Real Madrid, El Clasico, the next week after that in La Liga. And that one is going to be huge to see who's going to take that Spanish League trophy home this season. So as always, until next time, Forza Barça.